Do you have the book? Because I don't have it.
Yeah, where's the book?
So it's in the book. Thank you for writing. Anybody needs the book, Song Book or Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu?
Hare Krishna.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Karo More.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Karo More.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Karo More. Toma bina ke dayalu jagat samsare. Patita pavana hetu tavaya avatara. Moshama patita prabhu na paibe ara. Ha ha Prabhu Nityananda Premananda Shukhi. Kripa balo kana karo ami bar dukhi. दया करो सीतापति अद्वैत गोसाई तव कृपा बले पाय चैतन्य निताय हा हा स्वरूप सनातन रूपा रघुनाथ भट्ट जुगा श्री जीवा प्रभु लोकनाथ दया करो श्री आचार्य प्रभु श्रीनिवास दया करो रामचंद्र संग मांगे नरोत्तम दास रामचंद्र संग मांगे नरोत्तम दास जय पंचतत्व जय पंचतत्व जय पंचतत्व जय पंचतत्व प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद निताई गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताई गौर हरि बोल ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य सरस्वती श्री श्रीमद् अभयचरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी शिल प्रभुपाद की इस्कॉन विभूति फांडाचार्य जगत गुरु शिल प्रभुपाद की ग्रंथ राज श्री चैतन्य चरितमृत की शिला रामानुजाचार्य की जय वृंदा देवी तुलसी महारानी की गौर प्रेमानंदी all glories to the assembled devotees all glories to the assembled devotees all glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga all glories to Srila Prabhupada Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashata Desata Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna. So today we are reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita as we do every Sunday. And we are now in Madhya Leela chapter 22. And today we shall go through verses 72, 73 and 74 as I reckon. And text 74 is on the board. So we will recite that together. And perhaps 72 and 73 I shall read through. Sarva bhuteshu ya pashyet bhagavad bhavam atmanaha bhutani bhagavati atmani esha bhagavatottamaha. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So the translation to text 72, Madhya Leela chapter 22 reads as follows. A person advanced in devotional service sees within everything the soul of souls, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. Consequently, he always sees the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the cause of all causes and understands that all things are situated in him. So the purport is just one line. This is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 2, Text 45. And Dinanath Prabhu, if I go very fast, you can let me know. Then text 73. Ishvare tad adhineshu balisheshu dvishatcha prema maitri kripopeksha yakaroti samadhyamaha. Translation. An intermediate second-class devotee shows love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is friendly to all devotees, and is very merciful to neophytes and ignorant people. The intermediate devotee neglects those who are envious of devotional service. Purport. This is also a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 2, Text 46. This statement was made by the great sage Narada while he was speaking to Vasudeva about devotional service. This subject was originally discussed between Nimi, the king of Videha, and the 9 Yogendra. And now we shall read today's verse. Very famous one. Archayam eva haraye pujam yaha shraddhaye hate natat bhakteshu chanyeshu sa bhaktaha prakritaha smritaha archayameva hare pujamya shraddhaye hate natat bhakteshu chanyeshu sa bhakta prakrita smrita archayameva hare pujamya shraddhaye hate natat bhakteshu chanyeshu sa bhakta prakrita smrita. Please recite.
Archayameva haraye pujamya shraddhaye hate natat bhakteshu chanyeshu sa bhakta prakrita smritaha Shraddhaye Hate Natat Bhakteshu Chanyeshu Sabhakta Prakrita Smritaha.
Mataji. Archayameva Bharate
Arjayameva Bharate
Pujamya Shraddhaye Hate
Pujamya Shraddhaye Hate
Natat Bhakteshu Chanyeshu
Natat Bhakteshu Chanyeshu
Sabhakta Prakrita Smritaha
Sabhakta Prakrita Smritaha.
Archaya, in the temple worship. Eva, certainly. Hare, for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Puja, worship. Yaha, anyone who. Shraddhaya, with faith and love. Ihate, executes. Na, not. Tat bhakteshu, to the devotees of the Lord. Cha anyeshu, and to others. Saha, he. Bhaktaha, a devotee. Prakritaha, materialistic. Smritaha, is considered. Translation. A Prakrita Bhakta or materialistic devotee does not purposefully study the Shastra and try to understand the actual standard of pure devotional service. Consequently, he does not show proper respect to advanced devotees. He may, however, follow the four regulative principles learned from his spiritual master, or from his family who worships the deity. He is to be considered on the material platform, although he is trying to advance in devotional service. Such a person is a Bhakta Praya, neophyte devotee, or Bhakta Abhasa, for he is a little enlightened by Vaishnava philosophy. Purport. This verse is also from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 2, Text 47. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that one who has full love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead and who maintains a good friendship with the Lord's devotees is always callous to those who envy Krishna and Krishna's devotees. Such a person is to be considered an intermediate devotee. He becomes a first-class devotee when, in the course of advancing in devotional service, he feels an intimate relationship with all living entities, seeing them as part and parcel of the Supreme Person. Is the incense on? Thank you. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manubhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayang Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhavitamscha Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Dinamane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Desatharine Vancha Kalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaiva cha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratushe Namaha. Nilachala Nivasaya Nityaya Paramatmane Balabhadra Supatrabhyam Jagannathaya Te Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'll just read the verses and translation of all three once again. Sarva bhuteshu ya pashet bhagavad bhavamatmanaha bhutani bhagavati atmani esha bhagavatottamaha. A person advanced in devotional service sees within everything the soul of souls, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Consequently, he always sees the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the cause of all causes and understands that all things are situated in him. Ishvareta dadhineshu valisheshu dvishachuscha prema maitri kripopeksha yakaroti samadhyamaha. An intermediate second-class devotee shows love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is friendly to all devotees and is very merciful to neophytes and ignorant people. The intermediate devotee neglects those who are envious of devotional service. And today's verse that we have on the board, Archayameva hare pujam yashadhaye hate natad bhakteshu chaneshu sabhakta prakrita smita. A prakrita bhakta or materialistic devotee does not purposefully study the Shastra and try to understand the actual standard of pure devotional service. Consequently, he does not show proper respect to advanced devotees. He may, however, follow the regulative principles learned from his spiritual master or from his family who worships the deity. He is to be considered on the material platform, although he is trying to advance in devotional service. Such a person is Bhakta Praya, neophyte devotee, or Bhakta Abhash, for he is a little enlightened by Vaishnava philosophy. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. I'm a little jittery today, but is the light fully on? Or can it be brighter? I just feel it's a little dark. Yeah, thank you. Yes, firstly I would seek the blessings of all the assembled Vaishnavas so that I may be able to render this service primarily for my own purification. And it was very nice to actually go through these verses. And as I reckon last Sunday, Harikatha Prabhu had given the lecture and he very elaborately went into the three stages of Kanishtadhikari, Madhyamadhikari and Uttamadhikari. And of course, here we are continuing the discussion, and particularly here we have a mention of who is a neophyte devotee and who is a Madhyama devotee. So I was hoping today we can slightly discuss, let's say start off our discussion with this aspect of the different categories of devotees and the exchanges and flows between them of relationships. Then maybe go on to something I thought we could discuss about how to have a discussion, because sometimes between these different categories we have exchanges, right? So there are different discussions, so how to have a discussion. And lastly, some bits on relationships, and then hopefully we can end with glories of Srila Ramanujacharya, and I think it's his appearance day today. So, and also Srila Ramanujacharya very significantly displayed, this very proper conduct in relationships, whether it's with neophytes, with Madhyama or Uttama. I mean, of course, he was a very special personality. So we just read through and we've been listening about the different qualities. So perhaps I thought, just to wake us all up, maybe we can all say a few qualities that we hear about the neophyte and the Madhyama. Of course, Uttama we know is very transcendental, and the Uttama Adhikari is the best of devotees, but thinks, everybody became a devotee, but I could not become a devotee. That's the beauty of the Uttama Adhikari. And it is said that the Uttama Adhikari has to come to the platform of Madhyama Adhikari to preach. Why is that? Why do you think that the Uttama Adhikari has to come down to a Madhyama level to preach?
Because he has to separate.
Very good, Telina, yes. Because he has to distinguish. So that means a characteristic of the Kanishta and Madhyama is the necessity to distinguish. And especially I would say for Madhyama, sometimes it is said the Kanishta is not intelligent enough. So the Madhyama has the task to distinguish their association. So perhaps we could start with, here we read about some qualities of the neophyte devotee. So anybody remembers? Or you just generally also remember something about a trait of Kanishta Adhikari?
Just received first initiation and tries to chant the money.
Okay, that's one consideration. That's Kanishta? Okay. All right. Yes. Yes. I think that's the most distinguishing factor, that a Kanishta sees Krishna only where he sees Krishna in the dairy form and nowhere else. Whereas we know that Krishna resides in the holy name and especially in the association of devotees. And then it is suggested that we rise to the Madhyama level where we can distinguish, and because it is said a trait of the Madhyama Adhikari is that a Madhyama Adhikari is fully convinced in Krishna consciousness. And of course the Uttama Adhikari is a first class devotee, and right below is the Madhyama Adhikari. And the Madhyama Adhikari is a person who is capable of having good friendship with the Lord's devotees and is callous to those who envy Krishna. So now I'm listening to a lecture series by His Holiness Bhaktichara Swami Maharaj on Vaishnava etiquette, and this is exactly the topic he's dealing with, of the 3 stages of adhikars. And he was speaking of the Madhyama Adhikari, and he was mentioning how the Madhyama Adhikari is able to distinguish between, different, like there are 3 levels, as we know: junior, equal and senior. So the junior levels are devotees who may be younger in age or younger in Krishna consciousness. And then the question comes, aren't we supposed to be Trinadapi Sunichena, so humble that we should see ourselves as the lowest of the low? Yes, that is necessary. However, in interactions we have to also be very conscious, because Srila Prabhupada has in many instances said that in our exchanges we have to be able to give respect in a proper manner. So when we give respect, that means we are also able to qualify. Of course, we give immense respect to everybody, all devotees, but then also the quality of that respect varies according to the individual. How does that vary? So when we are dealing with our juniors or younger devotees, we act out of affection or love. When we are dealing with equals, it's friendship, confidentiality. And also when we are dealing with our advanced or seniors, there is high amount of respect and also confidentiality. But there is one aspect, which is one trait, which is underpinning all the three, which is service. So the mood of service is something that covers all our interactions. So a Madhyama has these three exchanges with devotees, and towards the individuals who are envious of Krishna, the Madhyama avoids them. And one point His Holiness Bhakticharya Swami Maharaj made, that a Madhyamadikari is trying to develop love for Krishna, and a devotee acts only out of love. What does that mean? So he was saying how the domain, of course we talk about the love of Godhead, right? We are trying to reach back to Godhead. So he was making this point how the domain of love can only be reached from love and not hatred. So our love towards Krishna, our love towards the devotees, and our whatever we do in Krishna consciousness, it has to be done out of love and not hatred. That's why Prabhupada says that he did not give a process of only neti, 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 not this, not that. Prabhupada gave us a process where to do something. And Prabhupada would very often say that, all these young hippies, I made them into happies. How? Because I gave them something that to attach themselves to, not just, okay, don't do this, don't do that, but also to attach themselves to something. So, similarly, as practicing devotees, we have to understand that we cannot really, develop strong hatred, or of course there is some sort of aversion, but Maharaj was making this point, and I will refer to him as Guru Maharaj because he's my spiritual master. So Guru Maharaj was making this point of how attachment and aversions are two sides of the same coin. So a devotee must act out of love, and even to avoid somebody if somebody is envious of Krishna, and to avoid somebody is also an act of love. And why is that an act of love? Because if a person who is envious of Krishna and you go to him or her and try to preach or try to be friendly, and that person is offensive, it's really harming the person more than benefiting. So that was a very beautiful point, how in all our exchanges love becomes the basis. And so I was thinking to move on, because Guru Nishta Prabhu is here. I want to keep enough time for questions. So I thought I would move on to the next aspect of our discussion, which is about discussions. So in the Nyaya Sutras, there is a description of how to have discussions. And I haven't read the Nyaya Sutras myself, not all of it, but there was this hermeneutics course. Anybody's taken the course? Hermeneutics? Hermeneutics is basically how to, it's giving you tools to interpret the Shastras or Srila Prabhupada's teachings. And it's something offered by the Shastric Advisory Council. And if you want, I can share the reading material with you, very insightful. However, we had this course on hermeneutics, and Hari Parshad Prabhu, who will be joining us this afternoon, was one of the teachers. And he was taking this topic of discussion. So in the Nyaya Sutras, there are 3 ways you can have a discussion. No, 4 ways. I hope I remember it correctly, it was a while ago. Samvada, Vada, Jalpa and Vitanda. So Samvada, it is, for example, between a teacher and a student. So a teacher and a student, and how does Samvada, it's a discussion. So sometimes you might think that we are going to the teacher to only hear, but no. Actually our Shastras provide for a discussion. And what is that kind of discussion? It is to understand the absolute truth, or understand. That is Samvada. Then we come to Vada. And generally these are not just called discussions, but they are also named as debates, because Nyaya logic is a lot about debates. So Samvada is to understand the absolute truth. And Vada. And Samvada is definitely even sometimes above the mode of goodness. And Vada is to reach the ultimate truth. For example, let's say Anna and I are having a discussion. She says, I don't know, the flowers are yellow. I say, no, the flowers are golden. And we have a vada or debate to ascertain what is the actual color of the flower. So you understand, to reach the actual truth, we have a discussion or debate. That's vada. And then, if I remember correctly, there is jalpa. And jalpa means that you discuss to conquer. Or you discuss to make, no, sorry, you actually discuss to make the other person understand your point. So I will talk to Anna to make her understand, no, the flowers are golden. So that's jalpa. That I am trying to convince her, that's the whole motivation, that I'm trying to convince her the flowers are golden. That's the whole point. So she might also come to the discussion thinking the flowers are yellow, and then imagine if you are so stubborn and I'm so stubborn, what happens to the debate? And then in the end we have Vitanda. It is said the most horrific form. That's not how I was taught, but that's how I remember it. Why? Because this is the lowest mode. Because you then discuss to conquer or defeat the other person in whatever cost possible. For example, I want to defeat Anna and prove that the flowers are golden. So, I don't know, I paint her glasses golden or something, you know. By hook or by crook, I make sure that I win the discussion. So these are the different forms of having discussions. And I was actually reflecting that also in our day-to-day lives, you know, you can really categorize discussions in this way. What is a samvada, what is a vada, what is jalpa, and what is vitanda. So as devotees, we should always strive for samvada, which is in the mode of goodness or even above the mode of goodness. And that is the most Krishna-conscious approach, to understand what is the absolute truth. And vada also is not so bad, provided it comes from a Krishna-conscious perspective. But mostly what happens is, in our interactions, we tend to dwell on jalpa or vitanda. And mostly when things get bad, it's vitanda. That to prove ourselves right and the other person wrong. So, and then while I was contemplating on this, I thought to touch upon a little bit on relationships. Not my strong point, but yeah, please understand, I'm not saying this because I have realized, but like all of us, I'm also a work in progress. So, and also, you know, like, yeah, there were certain things I was going through in the sense of, you know, like understanding personality, going into the psychological things. So that has been a little bit of my journey the past couple of months. And also, I don't know if all of you know, Krishna Prema Rupa Prabhu was offering this Enneagram course. So I also took that. That was also quite fascinating. So, you know, like there are different tools to work on ourselves. But the most helpful for me was hearing from His Holiness Swayam Bhagwan Keshav Maharaj. And yesterday I was telling somebody that he's really such a role model. I just want to be like him, you know. And he's such an asset. Sometimes Radha Mataji and I have this discussion. He's such a gift to our movement. And we need actually, especially the young generation, the youth, we need these examples to show us how Krishna conscious and the way we should be Krishna conscious. Because at the end of the day, we are the future of Srila Prabhupada's movement. And of course, we can take Krishna conscious in a very light way and just go with the flow and wait for one day when I'll be fully Krishna conscious. But that sense of urgency is very important. Because I was just contemplating on this point that it's a harsh truth that gradually most of Srila Prabhupada's disciples are leaving. Our spiritual masters are leaving, and many senior devotees are leaving, and many senior devotees at a very advanced stage. And it is so imperative for us to become serious now, because later there will not be a chance. Because later when we want to be serious, we will not have... Of course, we always have enough guidance from Srila Prabhupada. Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki Jai. Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki Jai, Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. So, yes, like we do have adequate guidance from Srila Prabhupada's books, but how many of us are reading? And how many of us are seriously adopting Srila Prabhupada's teachings? So our seniors or the Guru Jana are so important in our lives. And we have to be so serious about this actually. You know, we can chant scrolling through the phone, we can forget to read Prabhupada's books, we can do all of that, but then it's our own loss. Because once this moment passes, it will not come back. And a few days ago, Srila Prabhupada had this quote on the calendar, that once this time passes, he mentioned a time, it's not going to come back. So, yeah, this is a very scary truth, especially the young generation has to come to terms with. That we have to prepare ourselves now itself. And I would even go so far as to say that prepare ourselves towards the art of dying. Because I think that is what really makes us serious, you know, when we are serious about the fact that, yeah, someday all of us are going to die. And it's something very difficult to, when you are, you know, in a young body, it's difficult to remember. And does not mean that you become morose. No, Krishna consciousness is a very happy process and it's very ecstatic. You know, we chant and we dance and we eat a lot. So it's a very happy process. Susukham kartam avyayam in chapter 9, it's mentioned. But at the same time, it's also a very grave process, a very serious process. So it's like the ocean is maybe very turbulent on top. So as devotees, we are like really happy-go-lucky, we are happy dancing elephants. But deep inside, we must be deep. You know, like we should be really deep as the ocean. Srimad Bhagavatam also mentions several aspects. Like, I think it was in King Prithu's, or an ideal king should be as deep as the ocean, as rigid as, or as fixed as the mountain, and so on. So as devotees also, we should be very deep. And this depth comes from the proper practice of Krishna consciousness. And with this, perhaps we could also dwell on the point of how the primary focus of our Krishna consciousness is actually association of devotees. And of course, we know that association of devotees is very important to progress in Krishna consciousness. But I was listening to this lecture of Swayam Bhagavan Keshav Maharaj. It's a very nice lecture, I would recommend everyone to hear. It is The Science of Relationships. It was very nice. And there he talks about how, I don't know, I mean, all of us have gone through difficulties in some relationship or the other. How is your chanting then? I don't know, I have a lot of difficulties, you know. If you, at least if I'm going through a rough patch in relationships, it's just so turbulent. Like my mind, maybe because I have a weak mind, but, you know, it's really like the heart and the mind is so not in peace. And then he was actually making this point that to meditate, so for meditation, a peaceful mind is very important. And for a peaceful mind, peaceful relationships are very important. So relationships that way are, you could say, or having good relationship is the central figure of our devotional practice. And he gives 5 tips of how to have good relationships or how to improve relationships. And it's very interesting. He gives a lot of examples. You know how he is like a very eloquent speaker. And you can go back and listen to him for different insights, but I'll just touch upon the basics. So the first thing he says, that a necessity in a relationship is acceptance. So we have to be really accepting of the other devotees in the sense that we can have our version of what we are, like we think we are this, we are that. And then, you know, we also have a perception of what the other person is, you know, like this or like that, or the other person does this, but I don't like it because this is not my way, etc. And he was making this point that sometimes we tend to project our own standards, our own necessities on others. And that is something that sometimes really damages relationships. So his suggestion was that we have to be accepting, of others. We have to be, I think if we just accept individuals as they are, everything is just so simple. And of course, to do that is not so simple because we have our whole big baggage of anarthas and our own conditioning. But it's something very nice to remember, to just be accepting. And I think also acceptance comes from simplicity or a simple heart. And the more we are able to do that, and he was making one point which really resonates with me a lot. He said that, sometimes we want perfect relationships, or we want like perfect people, we want perfect circumstances. But we are in the material world. And what is one of the qualities of the material world? It's highly imperfect. And especially now, it is the cosmic age, the Kali Yuga, or it's an age of quarrel. So there are bound to be differences, there are bound to be imperfections. However, once we detach ourselves from our need of perfection, then things are not so hard. It's easier to accept, then it's easier to understand. So that's point one. And the second point he made was trust. And he was making this point how trust is a very important element in relationships. And of course, we also hear in the Nectar of Instruction, Upadeshamrita, Dadati Pratigrinati Guhyam Akhyati Prajyate. So this trust, confidentiality is the base of not only actually in Krishna consciousness, but even in the outside world, if you go, trust is very important. So he was mentioning how in this day and age it is very difficult to trust because, we have had experiences where our trust is broken and then it is very difficult to trust again, and all of these instances. But then, if we really go back to the first point of accepting and being accepting of imperfections, and then also try to trust devotees, then that enhances relationships. And then he was making this point also that I'm not too sure if... Okay, anyway, so this was on trust. And the next is... sorry, I heard this a long time back, so I'll have to recollect. Investment, yes. The next aspect is investment. So we have to invest in relationships. So the point he made about investment, which is the third point, is that how we as devotees should come into any relationship with the mood of service. And we should really invest in relationships in the sense that if you look at the material platform and what goes on in the material world, you gratify my senses, I will gratify yours. And as soon as there are differences, there is separation. Why? Because I am the center of the relationship. But in Krishna consciousness, when we have relationships with devotees, who is the center of the relationship? Yes. So Krishna and Guru, they are the center of the relationship. And therefore, the investment as devotees is in the mood of service. So that's the third point he made. And of course, he spoke very elaborately, but I'm kind of just going through it. And then the next point he made was forgiveness, the fourth point. And he said that, in all relationships, big, small, short, long, in all kind of relationships, there is always some exchanges where we might feel that, we hurt other devotees or other devotees hurt us. But this aspect of forgiveness is very important. And some devotees were asking him a question that where do I draw the line? And he said, of course, as individuals, we have to draw very we have to draw a line with toxic relationships. So that does not mean you forgive everything and anything. And he said that forgiveness does not equate to silence. Forgiveness does not mean that you have to be okay with everything. Forgiveness means that you are willing to work and invest and accept it's like a work in progress kind of a mindset. And he was saying that, sometimes we are so attached to toxic relationships because they are comfortable, and then we feel like, oh, let me forgive. But that's not really forgiveness. That's attachment to comfort. So that's not what we want. Yeah, we can be vocal and we can be accepting of how we feel and everything. But at the same time, we forgive and we invest in a relationship with devotees. And the last aspect, which I found very nice, was connection. And when he spoke about connection, he said that, in the outside world, what is the connection people have with each other? It's related to the body, like mother and child, husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend, boss and worker. But in Krishna consciousness, we have a divine connection. And that is what is an eternal connection. And I was actually remembering that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj had this quote, that every interaction, what if this was the last interaction? Or something like that, I forget. Anyone remembers the quote? No. So he said something along the lines of, what if this was your last interaction? Or what if, this is the same person you meet in the spiritual world? So he also gave so much, and also my Guru Maharaj was so, sometimes I just feel like so ashamed as his disciple, because he invested so much in relationships, and he was genuinely invested in relationships with devotees, and devotee relationships, especially to all his disciples, he made sure we understood the importance. So, so the connection is very important. So we are all connected through the holy name and through Krishna. And therefore, this is the connection we will carry to the spiritual world. So we better have a nice one. This is a connection we will have all when we are back with each other, back in service, back in back Godhead, to Godhead. So this is, I thought, very nice that I thought maybe we could share. And very briefly, to have enough time for Guru Nishta Prabhu, on Ramanujacharya, it's Ramanujacharya's appearance day. And Srila Ramanujacharya was so attached to Krishna, So his spiritual master was Yadava. I forgot. This is also something I read a long time back. Yes, yesterday I was just sitting for the kirtan and I absolutely forgot about today, so I didn't quite get time to prepare. Huh? No, there was this other person, who he went to, and then he describes Krishna's eyes as the back of a baboon or something. Yeah, the Mayavada teacher. So he had this Mayavada teacher. And then once he was serving his teacher, and somebody came to the teacher and he asked, what are Krishna's eyes like? And then this person, dare I call him a rascal, sorry, but he described Krishna's eyes as, the backside of a baboon. And then a backside of a monkey, for example, And then Ramanujacharya was so deeply hurt. And I hope this is the right story. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And he started shedding tears. And those tears fell on the thighs of the teacher. And he looked and he's like, why are you crying? And then he said, but how can you describe Krishna? He was so much, his heart was so soft for Krishna. He said, how can you describe Krishna's eyes like that? And then what are Krishna's eyes like? He asked Ramanujacharya. And Srila Ramanujacharya said, they are like the lotus petal. And then he went on to describe. So he had so much love for Krishna. And also he is one of the stalwart acharyas. We know we have the 4 sampradayas. And Srila Ramanujacharya has very significantly attributed or contributed to the growth of devotional service. And if I'm not wrong, he's also the person who received the mantra and went on a hill, right? Yeah, so he followed the spirit of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or in the spirit of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Once he received a secret mantra, and his spiritual master said, do not ever share this with anybody. And what did he do, Lokapavani? He went on top of a hill and he called everybody and he announced what the mantra was. Why? He said, I may go to hell, but how can I reserve such a mantra which is all beneficial, which will benefit everybody? So such is the compassion and glories of Srila Ramanujacharya. Srila Ramanujacharya ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Granthara Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo.
So where's Guru Nishta's time?
1 minute we have. Maybe he doesn't have questions today. He doesn't look like he has questions today. Okay. Yes, Lokapavani.
I just want to say that I read that before Srila Prabhupada translated and wrote the commentaries on Bhagavad Gita and this, he would always suggest to people to read Ramanujacharya.
Uh-huh. Oh, okay.
That was
Interesting.
Because he made clear points of Vaishnava philosophy there.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. And where did you have, do you remember where you read it? Always nice to quote.
I think maybe from Giriraj.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
On Facebook?
Yes.
Okay, I will go check it out.
I think it's just bloggers.
Yeah, sure. Okay. All right. Any burning questions? No?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm a bit scared of this thing that you said.
Yes.
Like, what relationships you have with people around you? Like, that's what you.
I know, right?
No.
Yeah.
I picture the spiritual world a little bit different.
Yeah. But like the other day, if I may share something personal, I was speaking with His Holiness Krishna Chaitanya Maharaj about this, something similar. And I said how Krishna consciousness is like looking in a mirror, and sometimes the view is not so pretty. So whether it's our relationship or ourselves, there are difficulties. But then to remember that this is what we will carry with ourselves, it's helpful. It's difficult, but it's helpful. At the end of the day, you have to accept it. And of course, our differences or whatever, it's a lot, like there's like astrology, baggages from different past lives, different reasons in the future, our own character traits, our parenting, the society we grew up in. So there are so many different things that shape us. So then, like, what can I say, what to do? We try our best and leave the rest to Krishna. Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Yes.